Hello students, in today's lecture we are going to learn about dual nature of radiation and matter. NCERT section 11.7 to 11.8. We will also solve examples 11.1 to 11.3. This is disclaimer. Learning objectives. By the end of this lecture you will able to understand the dual nature of light through the photon concept and its properties, including energy and momentum relationships, and apply these in numerical calculations. Comprehend de Broglie hypothesis of matter waves. Calculate the wavelength associated with moving particles and explain why wave nature is observable only for microscopic particles. So in today's lecture, we will cover first 11.7 particle nature of light, the photon. Then we will solve an example 11.1. After that, example 11.2. And then 11.8 wave nature of matter. And last, we will solve one more example 11.3. So let's start by understanding the particle picture of light. This means we will explore how light, which we actually think of as a wave, can also behave like a stream of particles. First, let's talk about the photoelectric effect. This is when electrons are emitted from a material, usually a metal, after light of a certain minimum frequency shines on it. That minimum frequency is called the threshold frequency. If the light's frequency is below the threshold, no electrons are emitted, no matter how intense the light is. So, photoelectric effect gave us evidence that light in interaction with matter behaved as if it was made of quanta or packets of energy. These packets are called energy quanta. This means that the light does not just deliver energy smoothly like a wave, but a small discrete amounts. Einstein took this idea further and showed that these light quanta also have momentum, not just energy. Alright? Momentum is a measure of motion calculated as mass times velocity and is usually associated with particles. So Einstein's result suggested that light quanta behave like tiny particles with both energy and momentum. Having both a definite energy and a definite momentum is a strong sign that these light quanta can be thought as a particles. This was a major step in understanding the dual nature of light. It means that in some situations, light acts like a particle, not just a wave. Alright? These energy quanta of particles or light were given a special name, photon. So whenever we talk about photons, we are referring to these packets of light energy that also carry momentum. Now let's examine a key experiment that supported the particle nature of light. In 1924, H. Compton studied how X-rays scatter when they hit electrons. This experiment, known as Compton scattering, showed that light can transfer energy and momentum to electrons, just like particles do. This was strong evidence that light does not only a wave, it can act like a particle too. In 1921, Albert Einstein received the Nobel Prize in Physics for his work on the photoelectric effect. Alright, the photoelectric effect is when light shining on a metal surface causes electrons to be ejected. Einstein explained this by proposing that light comes in packets or quanta called photons. So, in 1923, Millikan was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for his work on the elementary charge of electricity and on the photoelectric effect. So, these discoveries together built a strong case for the dual nature of light, sometimes acting as a wave, sometimes acting as a particle. Now, let's understand the photon picture of electromagnetic radiation. All right. This means we will see how light, which we usually think of as a wave, can also behave like a stream of particles called photon. In interaction with matter, radiation behaves as if it is made up of particles called photons. A photon is a tiny packets of energy, and this idea helps explain effects like the photoelectric effect. So instead of thinking of light as just a wave, we also need to think of it as a collection of these energy packets. All right. So the energy E of each photon having frequency nu is E is equal to h nu is equal to hc by lambda. Alright, where h is Planck's constant, c is speed, and lambda is wavelength of light. Momentum p of each photon is p is equal to h nu divided by c, or we can say h by lambda. Alright. Speed of each photon is c equal to 3 into 10 raised to the power 8 meter per second in vacuum. That equals to speed of light. This is the fastest speed possible in the universe, no matter what the energy or momentum of the photon is. Its speed in a vacuum is always this constant value. Now, all photons of light of a particular frequency nu or wavelength lambda have the same energy and momentum irrespective of the intensity of radiation. All right. So it does not matter how bright the light is. If the frequency is same, each photon carries the same amount of energy. By increasing the intensity of light of given wavelength, there is only an increase in the number of photons per second crossing a given area, with each photon having the same energy. Alright, we can say increasing intensity does not change the energy of each photon. This leads us to an important conclusion. The energy of a photon depends only on its frequency or wavelength, not on the intensity of light. So Turning up the brightness does not make each photon more energetic. It just increases the number of photons. Remember that photons are electrically neutral. They have no charge. Because of this, they are not affected by electric or magnetic fields. This property helps distinguish photons from charged particles like electrons, and it's why light can travel through space without being deflected by these fields. So, in a photon particle collision, like photon electron collision, the total energy and the total momentum are conserved. In these interactions, both the total energy and total momentum are conserved. All right. That means the sum of energy and the sum of momentum before the collision are equal to the sums after the collision. So, unlike a classical particle collisions, the number of photons is not always conserved. A photon can be absorbed by a particle, or a new photon can be created in the process. For example, in the photoelectric effect, a photon is absorbed and disappears, transferring its energy to an electron. This shows us that while energy and momentum are always conserved, the number of photons can change depending on the interaction. Now, let's look at what determines the intensity of light. The intensity for a specific wavelength depends on how many photons pass through a unit area per unit time. So, if we increase the number of photons, the light becomes brighter, even if each photon has the same energy. Alright. Example 11.1. Monochromatic light of frequency 6.0 into 10 raised to the 14 Hz is produced by a laser. The power emitted is 2.0 into 10 raised to the minus 3 watt. You have to calculate A. What is the energy of a photon in the light beam? B. How many photons per second on an average are emitted by the source? Let's see the solution. First, let's identify what's given in the problem. So the frequency of light, which we call nu, is 6.0 into 10 raised to the 14 Hz. And the power emitted is 2.0 into 10 raised to the minus 3 watt. So first, energy E of a single photon frequency nu is given by A is equal to h nu, right? Where h is equal to 6.63 into 10 raised to the power minus 34 joule second is Planck's constant. This equation shows the direct relationship between energy and frequency. Let's substitute the values into our formula. We are plugging in h as 6.63 into 10 raised to the power minus 34 joule second and nu 6 into 10 raised to the power 14 Hertz. We get E equal to this one. So solving the expression, you will be get E equal to 3.98 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 joule. Alright. Now, let's focus on what's given. The power of the laser P is 2.0 times 10 raised to the power minus 3 watts. And energy of photon is equal to 3.98 into 10 raised to power minus 19 joules. Remember, power is the rate at which energy is emitted or transferred, and energy per photon tells us how much energy each individual photon carries. So let's see B part. Let's define N as the number of photons emitted by the source every second. This is what we are trying to find in part B of the question. So by knowing the total power and the energy per photon, we can figure out how many photons are being produced each second. Power P transmitted in the beam equals N into E. So N will be P by E. This tells us that the number of photons per second depends directly on the power and inversely on the energy per photon. So substitute the values into the formula. We have N equal to 2.0 into 10 raised to the power minus 3, and the value of E, that is 3.98 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 joule. This calculation will give us the number of photons emitted per second. So solving this, you will get 5.0 into 10 raised to the power 15 photons per second. This large number highlights how tiny the energy of each photon is, and how even a small amount of power involves an enormous number of photons. Example 11.2. Work function of cesium is 2.14 electron volt. Find A, the threshold frequency for cesium. B, the wavelength of the incident light if the photocurrent is brought to 0 by a stopping potential of 0.60 volt. Let's see the solution. So we see that the work function represented by phi naught is given as 2.14 electron volts for cesium. The work function is a property of the material. Next, we need to convert electron volt to joule. All right. So let's convert the work function from electron volts to joules. Since the SI unit of energy is the joule, so we multiply 2.14 electron volt by 1.602 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 joule per electron. So solving this, you will get 3.43 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 joule. This value will be used in our upcoming calculation to find the threshold frequency and the required wavelength. All right. Now, let's focus on part A. The work function, which we call phi naught, is related to the threshold frequency. Nu naught, by the equation here, phi naught equals h times nu naught. Here, phi naught is the work function in joules, h is Planck's constant, and nu naught is the threshold frequency in hertz. This equation tells us the minimum frequency of light needed to just eject electrons from cesium. So rearranging the formula, you will get nu naught is equal to phi naught by h. This means we take the work function and divide it by its Planck's constant to find the frequency. So just substitute the values into the formula. The work function for cesium is given as 2.14 into 2.14 electron volts, all right, which we convert to joules as 3.43 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 joule. All right. So when we calculate this, you will get the nu naught. So nu naught is equal to 5.16 into 10 raised to the power 14 hertz. Alright. Now, first here stopping potential V naught is 0.60 volt and work function phi naught of cesium is 2.14 electron volt. Einstein's photoelectric equation is given by E V naught is equal to h nu minus phi naught, where h nu is the energy of incident photon and E equal to 1.602 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 coulomb is the charge of electron. So rearrange the equation to solve for the energy of the incident photon. We get h nu is equal to E V naught plus phi naught. So just substitute the values into the equation. So we have h nu is equal to 1.602 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 coulomb into 0.60 volt plus 2.14 electron volt. So h nu is equal to 0.60 electron volt plus 2.14 electron volt. When we adding, you will be get 2.74 electron volt. This is the energy of the incident photon required in this situation. Alright. Now, to find the wavelength lambda, we will use energy of photon h nu equal to hc by lambda. Alright. So, lambda is equal to hc divided by h nu, where c equal to 3 into 10 raised to the power 8 meter per second. We know h nu is equal to 2.74 electron volt. We converting unit of energy to joules. So h nu equal to 2.74 electron volt into 1.602 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 joule per electron volt is equal to 4.39 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 joule. So lambda equal to 6.63 into 10 raised to the power minus 34 joule second into 3 into 10 raised to the power 8 meter per second divided by 4.39 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 joule. So solving this, you will be get lambda equal to 4.54 into 10 raised to the power minus 7 meter, or in nanometer it will be 454 nanometer. Now let's understand the de Broglie hypothesis. This hypothesis connects the behavior of waves and particles, specifically when we look at very small objects like electrons. We will see how this idea changed our understanding of both light and matter. So let's start by looking at the wave nature of light. Light can behave like a wave, and we see this in experiments such as interference, diffraction, and polarization. For example, when light passes through two slits and creates a pattern of bright and dark bands, that's interference. These effects shows us that the light can spread out, bend, and combine just like water waves. But light does not always act like a wave. In photoelectric effect and the Compton effect, light behaves as if it is made up of tiny particles, and that tiny particles called photons. In these cases, light transfers energy and momentum in small packets or quanta to electrons. This particle-like behavior helps explain why shining light on a metal can knock electrons out of it, which would not happen if light were only a wave. If radiation shows dual wave particle nature, then perhaps matter like electrons, protons, etc. also possesses a dual nature. Now let's understand de Broglie hypothesis. This idea is central to the concept of dual nature of radiation and matter, which means that things we usually think of as particles can also behave like waves. So first, let's look at the historical context. So in 1924, a French scientist named Louis de Broglie suggested that moving material particles like electrons or even larger objects should show wave-like properties under certain conditions. This was a big shift from the traditional view that only light and other forms of radiation could behave as both waves and particles. De Broglie based his reason on the idea that nature is symmetrical. He believed that if energy like light can act both as a wave and as a particle, then matter should also have this dual character. So if the radiation like light can behave as both a wave and a particle, de Broglie argued that matter like electrons, protons, or even atoms should also show both wave and particle properties. So de Broglie proposed that uh, a moving particle of matter has a wave associated with it. This wave is not something we can see directly, but it affects how particles behave specifically at very small scales. Wavelength lambda associated with a particle of momentum p is equal to mv is given as lambda is equal to h by p is equal to h divided by mv. So here m is the mass of the particle, v is the speed of the particle, and h is 6.63 into 10 raised to power minus 34 joule second is Planck's constant. This equation is called de Broglie relation, and wavelength lambda is known as the de Broglie wavelength. The key takeaway is that all matter has a wave nature, but it's not only noticeable for very small particles. So de Broglie wavelength, a lambda of a particle of momentum p is equal to mass into velocity is given by lambda is equal to h by p equal to h divided by mv. Dual nature of matter is evident in the de Broglie relation. Alright, so we can say it means that not just like light, but all matter like electrons, protons, even waste balls can have wave-like properties for very small particles like electrons. These wave effects are significant and can be observed in experiments such as electron diffraction. So left hand side of equation 11.5 shows wave nature of the light, while right hand side shows particle nature of light. Planck constant h relates the dual nature of light. Now, de Broglie wavelength lambda of a particle of momentum p is equal to mass into velocity, that is lambda is equal to h upon mv. Equation 11.5 for a material particle is basically a hypothesis whose validity can be tested only by experiment. However, de Broglie relation is satisfied also by a photon. So for a photon of frequency nu, momentum p is given by p equal to h nu by c. Therefore, we get wavelength lambda as h by p equal to c by nu is equal to lambda. Thus, de Broglie wavelength of a photon h by p is equal to wavelength of electromagnetic radiation, lambda of which photon is a quantum of energy and momentum. Why is the wave nature of matter not apparent in our daily observations? So de Broglie wavelength, the wavelength which we call lambda is given by lambda equal to h by mv. So here from equation 11.5, lambda is smaller for a heavier particle, large mass m, or more energetic particle, large mass v. So we can say, for example, if you double the mass or the speed, the wavelength is cut in half. De Broglie wavelength lambda is so small for heavier particles, large mass m, that is beyond and any measurement. This explains why we don't see wave properties in things around us, like cars or people. Their masses are so large that their wavelengths are practically zero for all practical purposes. That's why in our daily life, objects behave like particle, not waves. But if we look at very tiny particles like electrons or atoms, their masses are so small that their wavelengths becoming significant and measurable in the world of atoms and subatomic particles. The wave nature is important. Now, uh, let's take a practical example to explore this idea. Imagine a ball with a mass of 0.10 kilograms moving at a speed, we can say 20 meters per second. To find its momentum, which is the product of mass and velocity, we use the formula P equal to mass into velocity. Here P stands for momentum and m is mass and v is the velocity. So let's calculate the momentum. Multiplying the mass 0.12 kilograms by the speed 20 meters per second gives us a momentum of 2.40 kilogram meter per second. De Broglie wavelength lambda is equal to h by p is given as lambda equal to 6.63 into 10 raised to the minus 34 joule second divided by 2.40 kilogram meter per second. So solving this, you will be get 2.76 into 10 raised to the minus 34 meter. This wavelength is so small that it is beyond any measurement. Alright. So that's why we don't observe wave-like behavior for large objects in daily life. Their wavelengths are just too tiny to have any noticeable effects. So let's start by recalling the basic formulas for a non-relativistic particle. That means the particle speed is much less than the speed of light. So we can use classical mechanics. Alright. Here m is the mass, v is the speed, and p is the momentum, and k is the kinetic energy. So we have the formula k is equal to 1 by 2 mv square is equal to p square by 2m, which relates kinetic energy to momentum. So momentum p can be written as p equal to under root 2 mk. Substituting this into the de Broglie relation, lambda equal to h by p, we get lambda equal to h divided by under root 2 mk, where h is the Planck's constant. Now, if an electron is accelerated from rest through a potential difference V, its kinetic energy is K equal to electron volt. And de Broglie wavelength in terms of kinetic energy is lambda equal to h divided by under root 2 mk. Therefore, de Broglie wavelength lambda of an electron is given by lambda equal to h divided by under root 2 me electron volt. So substituting values of h equal to 6.626 into 10 raised to the power minus 34 joule second, me is equal to 9.11 into 10 raised to the power minus 31 kg, and E equal to 1.602 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 coulomb. So we get lambda equal to 1.227 divided by under root V nanometer, where V is the accelerating potential in volts. Example 11.3. What is the de Broglie wavelength associated with an electron moving with a speed of 5.4 into 10 raised to the power 6 meter per second, and B, a ball of mass 150 gram traveling at 30.0 meter per second? So let's look at the solution of this problem. For an electron mass m equal to 9.11 into 10 raised to the power minus 31 kg and speed v equal to 5.4 into 10 raised to the power 6 meter per second is given. So we know de Broglie wavelength lambda of a particle of mass m and speed v is lambda equal to h by mv. Therefore, for an electron, de Broglie wavelength is given by lambda equal to h divided by m into v. So just substitute the value, you will be get the lambda. So lambda equal to 1.35 into 10 raised to the power minus 10 meter. Lambda equal to 0.135 nanometer. Alright. Now B. For a ball of mass m equal to 150 gram, which is equal to 0.150 kg and speed v equal to 30.0 meter per second. So de Broglie wavelength is given by lambda equal to h divided by mv. So just put the values. You lambda equal to 1.47 into 10 raised to the power minus 34 meter after calculating. So this wavelength of the ball is so small that it is beyond any measurement. Now let's summarize what we have learned so far in this lecture. Photoelectric effect proves light has particle nature with particles called photons. Each photon has energy equal to h nu and momentum p is equal to h by lambda. Photons are electrically neutral and not affected by electric or magnetic fields. Light intensity depends on number of photons per unit area per unit time. In photon collisions, energy and momentum are conserved, but photon numbers may change. Wave-particle duality applies to both matter and radiation. De Broglie proposed that matter has wave properties with wavelength h, lambda equal to h by p is equal to h divided by mv. For electrons accelerated by voltage v, so lambda equal to 1.227 divided by under root v nm. Wave nature is observable only for microscopic particles. Macroscopic objects have extremely small wavelengths, making wave nature unobservable. Now we have a practice questions. First, calculate the energy of a single photon with frequency 3.0 into 10 raised to the power 15 hertz. How many photons per second are emitted by a 5-watt laser of wavelength 500 nanometer? Third, what is the de Broglie wavelength of an electron accelerated through a potential difference of 100 volt? A photon has wavelength 600 nanometer. Calculate its momentum. Find the threshold frequency for a metal with work function 3.2 electron volt. Alright, so these are the practice questions and all are homework. Thank you for your attention. I hope this lesson was helpful. Thank you.